Okay, so I think we're gonna get started. Hi everyone, my name is Cheryl. I'm the dietitian at the Zare stores in Kingsville and in LaSalle on Malden Road. So thank you for joining us for our Eating for Better Bone Health. We're gonna be doing a few of these in the next few months, so please, I hope you enjoy it and you come on back. Some of you might be familiar, I think Chantel had done a few of these presentations as well back a few years ago. She's on mat leave right now, so I'm covering for her. And yeah, so we're gonna get started. Before we do, I just wanted to let you know that we are live streaming today, so if you are talking or anything, it might get picked up by the mic, so please just be aware of that. If you do have questions, I invite you to ask as we go. I'll try to save some time at the end for questions as well. So if you want to ask then, you are more than welcome. You are also welcome to reach out to me. I have my contact information here, but it'll be on the last slide as well. I also brought a few business cards, so if you do have questions or you think of something later and you want to ask me, please feel free to reach out and do so. And then I encourage you to take notes because unfortunately we won't be sharing the slides, so take notes as we go. That way you can kind of take in as much information as you can, okay? So as I mentioned before, we will be running a few more of these workshops. So in February on the 24th, we have Eating for a Healthy Heart. We've got Anti-Inflammatory Eating and Eating for a Healthy Gut. All the topics that are going to be coming up in the next few months. We also do, as a dietitian, we also do personalized nutrition services, so one-on-one consultations for all kinds of different reasons. It could be general health, it could be a certain disease or medical condition, chronic disease, all kinds of stuff, athletes. And if it's something that I'm not familiar with, I do work with a team who have all kinds of different experience and niches. So if I don't know it, likely someone on my team will, so we can always help you out there. We also run virtual, corporate, private, and school events. Right now, it's mostly virtual. We are starting back a little bit the in-person stuff, as you can see here. We do have a group here. So, yeah, if you're ever interested in that, feel free to reach out. And then we have all kinds of webinars as well that we host. We have one coming up on February 2nd that myself and a colleague will be hosting. It's a 6-week series. It's called Forget the Weight, Feel Great, starting February 2nd at 5:30. It's a really, really awesome program, so if you do want more information, please feel free to reach out to me. Okay, so just a little bit on the agenda for today. We're going to discuss bone health and osteoporosis, nutrients for better bone health. I'll show you a sample bone healthy menu, and then we're just going to talk about movement a little bit. Okay, so bone health and osteoporosis. So bone is living tissue, constantly broken down and being replaced. Your bone health is determined by bone mass, which is the amount of bone tissue, and bone density, which is how compact it is. So osteoporosis reduces bone density slowly over time. So if you break down that word, osteoporosis, you've got osteo, which is referring to the bones, and porosis, which is translates to spongy or something porous. So when you put it together, you've got thinning of the bone, and it increases your risk of fracture. So the bones most affected are your hips, spine, wrists, and shoulders. So women and menopause, your estrogen actually decreases in menopause, and estrogen is a bone protecting hormone. So when your estrogen decreases, it leads to a loss of bone tissue. The bone loss rate increases 5 to 10 years post-menopause, but this is not to say that osteoporosis only affects women. Osteoporosis can affect men too, and it often goes undiagnosed because it is thought of as a female condition, which is not the case. Men can definitely be affected as well. So some nutrients that we're going to take a look at today to make sure that we're keeping our bones nice and healthy. We've got a list. Calcium is a big one, so that's going to be the first thing that we start off with. So let's take a closer look at calcium. So calcium's primary role is to support bone growth and structure. It is essential for healthy bones and to prevent osteoporosis, but a small percentage of your calcium intake is essential for other functions. It is responsible for helping to maintain a normal heart rhythm and helps nerves communicate to each other, which allows messages to be sent around your body and signals your muscles to contract and relax. Our bodies use calcium every day to function, so if we are actually not getting enough in our dietary calcium, our bodies will take it from our bones. So that kind of causes our bones to grow weaker over time if we're constantly pulling that calcium from the bone. So again, bone is living tissue, constantly renewing and repairing itself every day from wear and tear. Calcium is essential to helping the remodeling process stay balanced. However, like many nutrients, calcium is absorbed less efficiently as we age. So studies of older adults show that adequate calcium intake can slow bone loss and reduce the risk of fracture. So it's really important that we're getting that adequate amount of calcium because as we age, we just don't absorb it like we used to. Okay, any questions on calcium so far? No? Okay. Yes?
For calcium, should you take different types of calcium? Like I have a calcium magnesium
Okay, yep.
combination.
Yep.
You guys heard sometimes calcium, if you take that, it's not absorbed through your body as regularly?
Yeah, so we're actually going to talk about that a little bit in the upcoming slides. There are different supplements. You just want to make sure that the amount of calcium in there is a certain amount, which I'll show on a slide. And then depending on the type of supplement, I know you said it was calcium and magnesium, right? I'd have to double check, but I know calcium citrate, I believe it's best to be taken on its own. And then there's another one. We will go through it though in the slides, okay? Okay, so just some food sources of calcium. So as you can see on the left-hand side there, you've got your higher sources, so milk, cheese, yogurt, fortified milk alternatives, and then calcium-set tofu. And then it it gradually decreases as you move to the right. But these are all great sources of calcium and, foods that if you are looking to boost your calcium, really good foods to use that for. These are average amounts. Yogurt, for instance, it ranges from product to product. It can go from 150 to 300 milligrams. Plant-based milk, you want to make sure that it's added calcium. And that added calcium actually can settle at the bottom, so you want to make sure that you're shaking that carton before you pour it out. Tofu, the amount of calcium in tofu ranges from product to product, so you have to make sure that it's calcium set. You can do that by looking at the label, flip it over, look at the ingredients and that nutrition facts table, which we are going to talk about a little bit as well. You might notice on there salmon with bones, so you can buy salmon canned with little bones in it. You may or may not have noticed it before. They are tiny, so they're easy to bite through and everything. It might cause a texture issue if it really puts you off, but it is a great way to get calcium. And then some vegetables, almond butter, almonds, beans, and chia and flax are a couple others to highlight. You can find all of them in the Zehrs grocery store, but just a few items that we're not always used to buying, like almond butter, chia flax. So if you do have questions about those products, please feel free to ask. Okay, so moving on, we're gonna look at assessing a food's calcium content. So when we look at the nutrition facts table on the back, you'll notice on the right-hand side, it always has the percent daily value. So calcium's percent daily value is based on 1,100 milligrams of calcium. So if you remember back a couple slides ago, it recommended 1,200 milligrams for women 50 and up. So the percent daily value is actually based on 1,100 because it's more in the middle. It's more of an average for all adults. So just something to be aware of. So when we're looking at 20% of your daily calcium, as you can see in the slide there, it's the second last one. If we're looking at 20%, that means you're going to be getting around 220 milligrams. It is important to note, we do use nutrition facts tables for reference. They are not 100% accurate. It's an approximation, so they're not going to be 220 milligrams on the dot. Every package of food is going to be slightly off of that. Okay, so talking about calcium absorption, there are a couple things that we need to just be aware of that can kind of hinder or help our calcium absorption. One of the things that can hinder it are called oxalates. So the calcium in some foods like rhubarb, Swiss chard, and spinach, they're not as well absorbed because of their very high oxalate content. And that oxalate binds to the calcium. So they have other nutrients, but just not a wonderful source of calcium because that oxalate, it binds to it and then it doesn't let your body absorb it and it just gets excreted. So another one that's kind of like oxalates that we want to watch out for are called phytates. High fiber foods like cereals and legumes contain phytates that hinder the absorption by binding with calcium. But as long as you are reaching that approximate 1,200 milligrams that your recommended daily value, then it shouldn't be a problem. You just want to make sure and kind of be aware that if you are reaching for those foods with the oxalates like the Swiss chard and the rhubarb, not going to be a wonderful source of calcium. So something that can really help us with our with our calcium absorption is vitamin D. So we're going to talk about vitamin D in a few slides from now, but a lot of times you'll see calcium and vitamin D together in a supplement. That's because vitamin D is going to help your body absorb it. But we will talk about that in a couple slides. So if you want to evaluate your calcium, you can always come work with a dietitian. If you ever want any part of your diet to be evaluated, you can come work with me and we will go through it together. If you want to do it on your own, there is a calcium calculator on osteoporosis.ca. I've gone in and done this myself. It's really cool. So you just go in, put whether you're male or female, select your age, and then it provides a whole list of foods for you to choose from, and you can customize the amounts, depending if you had like a little piece of this or a bigger piece of that. So, and it'll give you an estimate or an approximation of how much calcium you've had that day. Keep in mind, if you are doing it halfway through the day, you are only halfway through and you would need to add the rest of your day in. But it's a nice indicator if you are worried about your calcium intake or if you are worried about your bone health. This is a really interesting place to start if you're not ready to meet with a doctor or a dietitian yet. This is a good place to just go in, take a look. If you do need a little bit more, you can always add a bit, but it's a good place to start. Any questions about that? No? Okay. Okay. So calcium supplements, you want to make sure that you are not taking over 500 milligrams at a time. Our body can only absorb so much at once, and calcium will actually hinder our absorption of iron as well. So if you're taking too much, it might kind of fight with that iron. They both have a 2+ charge. A certain kind of iron has a 2+ charge. So when you see two minerals with the same 2+ charge, they usually are going to be in competition for each other. So yes, make sure you're reading the label. You want to look at that serving size of elemental calcium. So often we'll see calcium combined with something else, and you want to make sure that what you're looking at is the actual amount of calcium itself. When it's bound with something else, you're going to be looking at the whole compound, and you want to make sure that that actual calcium amount is less than 500 milligrams. So just something to be aware of. Again, calcium inhibits iron absorption, and then excess calcium intake from supplements specifically can cause possible risk of heart disease, kidney stones, digestive issues, and constipation. So just something that we really want to be aware of. Calcium citrate, like I mentioned before, that one can be taken at any time. But if you're looking at a calcium carbonate supplement, that is better absorbed with meals. So there's all kinds of little things that can be a little bit tricky when we're picking out supplements. One of the things that I always recommend is to talk to your pharmacist, because usually when we're picking out supplements, there's oftentimes a pharmacy around. Go ask your pharmacist, what does this calcium mean? How much elemental calcium is here? If you're at your own pharmacy, ask them if it interferes with any medications or anything like that. They will be able to answer those questions for you as best as they can. Okay? Okay, so vitamin D. As I said, vitamin D helps our bodies to absorb calcium. And it also works to support our immune system, nerve, and muscle function. Again, as we aged, vitamin D is not absorbed as well, so you just want to make sure that you are getting enough in. We do recommend, again, always talk to your pharmacist first, but it is a common recommendation for adults over 50 to take a 400 IU, that's international units, 400 international unit daily supplement. So again, talk to your doctor, your pharmacist, or both, and they can kind of help direct you with that, okay? And like I said, supplements are often calcium and vitamin D together, so that would be it's kind of an easy way to get them both in, have them in one supplement, and that vitamin D will help you with the calcium absorption. Yes?
If you take like 1,000 milligrams pill, a tablet, do you take one in the morning and then take one later in the day?
1,000 milligrams of what?
Vitamin D.
Of vitamin D. So I would double check. I think you would still be okay, because vitamin D I think has a bit of a long stretch as to how much you can take. But just double check, because you want to make sure, you want to check out how many international units there are of vitamin D in there, because it's a different unit of measurement. So definitely double check. Even if you want to, you can take a picture of it and send it to me if you want, or you can come into the office and just show me which one that you're using, because there's different things in our supplements too. It's not always going to be just vitamin D. So, you can do that, and we can take a look at it just to make sure exactly how many international units there are and everything like that. Yeah. Yes?
Is there a difference between vitamin D and vitamin D3?
Yes, a little bit. So there's different kinds of, like, each letter vitamin, almost each one has different kinds. Vitamin D3 is just a certain type of vitamin D. It's still going to be good for you. It's still going to provide a lot of different functions for your body. It's just the actual chemical compound of it is just a little bit different. So vitamin B, for instance, it's got all kinds of different, like vitamin B6 and vitamin B3, and like there's all kinds of them. But they're just different, like the structure is a little bit different, and they are used for different things in our bodies, but they're still going to help you with those functions. Okay, so some food sources. So we've some food sources of vitamin D. A lot of times we think of vitamin D as the like the sun vitamin, which it is, but we can also get it in our diet. So fatty fishes like salmon, tuna, mackerel, trout, char, anchovies, sardines, those are all great sources of vitamin D. They also contain omega-3s, which are also very good for us, and we need to get those through our diet. So incorporating fatty fish into our diets at least twice a week, or about twice a week, is a really great thing to do to make sure that we're getting those nutrients. You can also get it from cow's milk, fortified milk alternatives, and egg yolk. So just some tips for increasing your calcium and vitamin D intake. We've got a cafe au lait or tea lattes. That's really just a higher amount of milk in your coffee or your tea. Having fatty fish or canned fish with bones more often, like we talked about earlier. Use milk, kefir, or a fortified milk alternative as the base of a smoothie. Use almond butter on toast, in yogurt, and baking, or with fruit instead of your regular peanut butter. Include almonds in trail mix, baked goods, and cereal. Wilt bok choy, collards, or kale into stir-fries pasta dishes. Sometimes cooking those leafy greens cooking different foods actually, it'll change the way that we absorb certain nutrients. So in this case, cooking it will actually help us to absorb that. Have yogurt with fruit for dessert or snack. Use plain Greek yogurt or skyr, which is Icelandic yogurt, to make dips or as a sour cream substitute. Personally, this is something I do all the time. If I'm making like a sour cream based dip, I'll often just replace the sour cream with Greek yogurt. If you're not quite, ready to do that, because it is going to make the taste change a little bit, you can even do half sour cream and half yogurt. Slowly start increasing that amount of yogurt. It'll provide more protein. You've got a good amount of calcium in there. I always use the 0% fat, so it's a little bit less of those fats. And I find it's a really good substitute. It doesn't change the taste too much. It's not offensive or anything like that. So something to try. Add cheese to wraps, omelets, and sandwiches. Use calcium set tofu with meals. Use milk or fortified milk alternatives in baking. And then when you're making oatmeal, cream of wheat, pancakes, and French toast, use milk instead of water. So I know a lot of those packets will say to use water. If you use milk, it's a little bit nicer tasting, in my opinion anyways. And then you get a little bit extra calcium and vitamin D in there as well. Okay, so moving on to vitamin B12. So like I said, B vitamins have all kinds of numbers. We're looking at B12 today. So vitamin B12 helps with bone formation. It also helps us to create healthy blood cells, and it helps in nerve function. Older adults, again, are at risk of low B12. And then I've got some food sources there. Eggs, dairy, meat, fish, shellfish, fortified beverages and nutritional yeast. So has anyone heard of nutritional yeast before or used it? So it's often used in vegan cooking. A lot of vegan cheeses are made with nutritional yeast. It's a very interesting product. It adds some flavor. You can find it. I've tried to look for it at the store. I may have just been missing it, but I'm pretty sure you can get it at the Bulk Bar, and if you are interested in playing around with it, it's an interesting product. So that's just one of the ones that you can buy. It's a Bob's Red Mill nutritional yeast. So choosing a fortified milk alternative. Before we keep going with this, does anyone know what fortified means? Because I know I've used it a lot. You've been hearing it a lot throughout the presentation. You may have noticed it, you may not. But does anyone know what fortified means? No? Anyone want to guess? Okay.
Add more stuff to it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So when we say fortified, we're referring to the practice of adding vitamins and minerals to commonly consumed foods during processing to increase the nutritional value. So, for instance, milk alternatives are often fortified with calcium, vitamin D, and vitamin B12. So that's something that we want to look out for because if they weren't added in, we wouldn't be getting them. And things like vitamin D and calcium, and B12, just had to make sure, you would get those out of real cow's milk. Okay, so you don't want to miss out just because you're switching to an alternative. So we have to look out for them. So this is an example of Earth's Own oat milk. So oat milk is an alternative. You can see here, if you take a look at the ingredients, the first thing we're looking for is calcium, and we see tricalcium phosphate. So that word calcium, we know you've got some calcium in there. Vitamin D2, same thing. It's in the ingredient list, so we should be expecting to see some vitamin D. And vitamin B12. So once you see these in the ingredient list, you can take a look at the nutrition facts table. And this isn't the whole nutrition facts table. The whole one should have the vitamin D and the vitamin B12. But if we take a look at calcium, you'll see that we are around 30%. 30% would be around 330 milligrams for 1 cup, which is actually right around the same as cow's milk. So this is still a great option because it is fortified. It's often on the front of the packaging. Sometimes it'll say fortified with this or fortified with that. If it's not, just turn around and take a look at the nutrition facts table and the ingredients to double check. So here we have Coconut Dream. So if we look at the ingredients, I'm not really seeing anything that says calcium or vitamin D or vitamin B12 because we only have coconut base, which is water and coconut cream, gellan gum, xanthan gum, and sea salt. So not seeing too much in the way of fortified ingredients there. And if we look at the nutrition facts, 0% calcium. So this is just kind of an example of that you have to check your nutrition facts tables and your ingredients because not all milk alternatives are created equally, right? They're not all going to be fortified, and it's important that we're still getting those nutrients that we're hoping to get when we have milk.
But that's somebody that would be lactose-free that would be drinking that then?
Yeah, you can have this if you're lactose-free, but the other options are also lactose-free as well, but this one unfortunately isn't fortified. Sometimes people don't drink milk to get these nutrients out of it if they're just adding it to their coffee or their cereal or something like that. So they're not always using it as sources for these nutrients, but if it is something that you turn for calcium or vitamin D, B12, this unfortunately isn't going to give that to you. Okay, any other questions? Okay. All right, so moving on. So here we're just talking about fruits and veggies because there are lots of vitamins and minerals in different fruits and veggies. So before we get started, does anyone want to share how they like to add fruits and veggies in an easy way just to increase their intake? Smoothies, yes, that's awesome. Actually, one of the things that I like to do is buy frozen bags. So you can get, yeah, same thing. Yeah, you can get frozen bags of fruit. I know, it's so easy. Frozen bags of fruit, you can get frozen bags of vegetables. They've got all kinds of different mixes in them, which are full of a variety of fruits or vegetables, depending on what you're buying. I often will buy the fruit. I buy the vegetables as well. And the vegetables are super easy. You throw them in a frying pan. It's already all cut up. It's different kinds of vegetables that actually taste good together. It's a good variety. You can add them into stir fries, super easy to cook. You can cook them on their own with a little low sodium seasoning. Makes a great side dish, I guess, or a great part of your meal. And it's just an easy way to really boost up your veggie or fruit intake. To make sure that we're getting a variety of nutrients and minerals and vitamins. So, like I said, fruits and veggies are very nutrient dense. Potassium, magnesium, and vitamin K are all going to work into your bone health. So potassium plays a buffering role in your blood, reducing that loss of calcium. So if you remember back to when we started, we were saying that if you're not getting enough calcium, your body will leach it from the bones, right? And we definitely don't want to be doing that. So potassium is going to help buffer that amount of calcium in your blood so that happens less often. Magnesium helps preserve bone structure. And vitamin K sends calcium to your bones, so from the blood to the bones. And of course, as I said, you can buy fresh or frozen. Either option is great. You don't have less nutrients in frozen. A lot of times freezing it will actually help to preserve those nutrients. So it's still a really, really fantastic option. Any questions on those? Okay. So the next one we're going to be looking at is protein. So protein helps to build and repair bone tissue. Some sources of proteins include pulses, which include all beans, peas, and legumes, eggs, meat, dairy, tofu, fish, nuts, and seeds. So I know a lot of times when we think of protein, we think of meat specifically, or maybe animal products, but you can certainly get protein from plant products as well. So, if you are looking to go a little bit more plant-based or looking to increase your plant intake a little bit, these are still some really great protein options to do so. And then if we're taking a look at this picture, which part of it would you guys think is the protein?
Beans.
The beans, yes, exactly. So if you'll notice, the beans are about 1/4 of the plate. So that is something that we want to aim for at each meal. You want your protein to take up about 1/4 of your plate, and then you want the other 1/4 there is going to be your starches. Those are half whole grain is going to be what you're aiming for. Half of that starch to be made up of whole grains. Again, you want to take a look at your ingredient list. Make sure the first ingredient on there is whole grain, whatever it is you're eating. And then that last half is going to be your fruits and non-starchy veggies. So that's why I'm saying it's really important that we try to bulk up those veggies that we're eating so that we can fill up that half of the plate. So any questions on the plate? No? Okay. It's good. Okay, so something to watch out for bone health, something that you would just want to be aware of and be careful of is sodium, anything that's high sodium. So Sodium, it is important for us to get it, but it is very easy for us to get it. A lot of times we go over the recommended amount of sodium, and that can cause some health issues. So we just want to make sure, be very aware of your nutrition facts table on the back. When you're taking a look at it, it's a good gauge, and you can use this for any of the nutrients on that table. When you're looking at the percent daily value on that right-hand side, 5% is going to be a little, so 5 or less is what we consider a little bit. 15% or more is considered a lot. So for something like sodium that's so easy for us to get in our diets, we get it from all kinds of things that we don't even think there's sodium in, but there is. So when we're looking at something for sodium, it's really good to go with anything that's 5% or less, because that means we're only going to be getting a little bit. Now, of course, this is speaking for general population. There will be some cases where, maybe this doesn't apply, but generally speaking, this is a pretty good way to go. And specifically for bone health, too much salt leads to a loss of bone density. So again, just try to aim for most of your foods to be in that 5% or less. It is likely that throughout the day, you'll be able to make up for that. And then something too to just keep in mind is the amount of added salt that you're putting in. So if you're someone who likes to really shake a lot of salt out, I do this because mine at home is like a grinder, but if you like to shake a lot of your salt in, or if you like to put a lot of salt in your cooking, maybe just be aware that, there might already be salt in there. If you buy foods that have no salt in them and you're the one adding it, that's probably a better way to go, because now you are in control. You're in control of how much salt you're going to be putting in. So it's just might make it a little bit easier if you are the one shaking it. It does taste a little bit different. I know if I buy beans canned with no salt, I can certainly taste the difference, but I just make up for it in the seasoning that I'm adding in. Okay? Any questions or suggestions about what you guys do for that? No? Okay. So just a little bit more on salt. The max amount of salt that we want to have in a day is about 2,300 milligrams. That's going to be your maximum. For adults aged 51 to 70, you want to aim for about 1,300 milligrams, so significantly less, because that 2,300 is going to be your maximum. And then for ages 70 and older, 2,300 is kind of that recommended amount, but no more than that. And if you do have high blood pressure or anything like that, you definitely want to stay underneath that. If you do, you can come talk to me afterwards and we can go over that a little bit as well. Okay, any questions about salt? No? Okay, so a couple of tips. Drink coffee in moderation. Now, when we say coffee, really we're just referring to caffeine, because too much caffeine can decrease the amount of calcium that's absorbed. And you want to stay below about 400 milligrams, so that's going to be about 4 cups of coffee a day. You're good? Less than 4 cups? You're skating by with 3. Yeah, 4 cups a day. I think a lot of people are, within that. But if you're drinking a big cup too, that's something to consider. If a cup does not necessarily mean your mug size, right? It's a cup. So you want to make sure that your mug isn't, the size of like 2 or 3 cups, because I know some of those mugs, they come like this, or like they're like big bowls. So just something to be aware of is your cup size. But 4 cups a day roughly is definitely what you want to stay under, just to help with that, with your bone health, because of calcium. And then if you are a tea drinker, you are in luck because there's about half the amount of caffeine in tea, most teas, as there is in coffee. And you have polyphenols in green and black tea. So green and black tea have those polyphenols, and that can help to keep your bones strong, especially when you're drinking it on, say, a daily basis. And you can also have regular or decaf, which is really great. So if you are worried about that caffeine, go for the decaf. You're still going to get those polyphenols out of a decaf black or green tea. Okay, alcohol. So too much alcohol can interfere with calcium balance. That's not to say that you can't have it. It's just to say that you don't want to have too much. And of course that goes for just alcohol in general. You just want to make sure it's in moderation. So the recommendation is for men to drink 3 drinks a day, but no more than 3 drinks a day or less, but no more than 14 a week. And then for women, it's 2 drinks a day or less, but no more than, I believe it's 10 a week for women. You definitely want to be planning for at least 1 non-alcohol drinking day a week. That is to avoid any kind of habits or anything like that. It's at least 1 non-drinking alcohol day a week. And you might be wondering what 1 standard drink looks like, right? Because again, like our giant mugs, that can look different for everyone. So if you are looking at, say, a glass of wine, which is going to be around 12% depending on the wine, but one that's around 12% is going to be about 5 ounces. If you're looking at beer that's going to be around 5% is going to be about 12 ounces for a standard drink. And then if you are looking at spirits around 40% are going to be about 1.5 ounces for a standard drink. So if you notice, the higher the alcohol percentage, the smaller that standard drink size is. Yeah? Do we have any questions about that?
Red wine's better than white wine?
Red wine is the recommended wine in the Mediterranean diet, actually, which is a really well-known diet, very healthy for you. And I don't want to say diet because that sounds short-term. It's more like a way of living, I guess, in terms of what you're eating. But red wine is the recommended wine because of the, I believe, the antioxidant properties in there. Yeah. So if you are a red wine drinker, little extra bonus, I guess, there. If you are a white wine drinker, that's okay too, though. Okay. Prunes. So not a ton of research yet to back this up, but it is something that's being looked at to eat dried prunes to support bone health and slow bone loss. There was one study that was done that showed eating 10 prunes a day reversed bone loss in postmenopausal women. So that's really fantastic that, that it's showing those kinds of signs. Really, really healthy for us. We don't exactly know why we were seeing that. Still, again, the research is still needs to be looked at a little bit closer. But some of the bone healthy components that you can find in prunes that are likely leading to that are magnesium, potassium, vitamin K, copper, and polyphenols. So just something easy that you can either snack on, or if you want to chop them up fine and add them into baking, it'll provide a little bit of sweetness for you. Some people like to put them in their energy bites. Or you can use them as a garnish on your salad if you like to add a little bit of sweetness to your salad. So just different ideas of how you can use them. But again, we're still kind of researching it, make sure it's, a valid recommendation, but it also doesn't hurt because prunes are good for us anyways, right? They've got they do other things for us too. So it's probably not going to hurt to add a little bit extra to your diet. Okay. Oh, does anyone have a way that they like to use prunes that they'd like to share with the group? Does anyone eat prunes regularly? Yeah? Oh, did you? There you go. Oh, okay. You just enjoy them. Yeah, you snack on them. Yeah, I mean, that's a great way too. If you like the taste, just go ahead and snack on them. It's easy. Okay. So this here is an example of a bone healthy menu. It's a great menu too because it kind of encompasses a lot of other components that we've talked about in making a diet a little bit healthier, more bone healthy, but healthy in general. So it contains a protein at each meal and snack. One of the things about proteins, why we want to include it at each meal and snack, is that it's going to help us feel satisfied. Proteins help us to keep feeling full longer. So you want to make sure that, yes, we usually have it in meals, but we don't always include it in our snacks. And it's just something that's good to keep in mind, that having that bit of protein in there will help to keep you feel full. It contains fruits and vegetables at each meal, sufficient in B12 from the yogurt, chicken, cheese, and salmon. Sodium is moderate, which, like we talked about, is something that we really want to keep an eye on because it's so easy to spike up that sodium intake. And then it still leaves room for that vitamin D supplement. Like we talked about, it's often recommended for that 400 IU daily supplement. So just going through the menu here. So in breakfast, we've got toast with almond butter and a cup of yogurt with berries. So in breakfast, where do you guys think that the calcium is coming from? Any guesses? So the almond butter, as the substitute for what people would normally use as peanut butter, the almond butter is going to have that calcium, and then the yogurt, that cup of 3/4 cup of yogurt is going to have it as well. So you're going to have about 100 milligrams from the almond butter and about 300 from that 3/4 cup of yogurt. What about lunch? Any guesses about where it might be coming from lunch?
Kale.
Yes, awesome. So the kale is going to be a good source there, especially like we said before, it's in a stir fry, so it's likely getting cooked down a little bit, making that calcium a little bit more available. What about the crackers and cheese? Cheese, yes. The salmon patties and baked sweet potato fries, and 1 cup of cooked broccoli. Any guesses here? Salmon, yes. Actually, this whole thing does provide us with some calcium. The salmon, the sweet potato, and the broccoli, they all have some calcium in them to make up that total of 250 plus 100, so 350. And then finally, we have a glass of oat milk with a cookie. If you remember, we looked at oat milk earlier. So that had around 330. We've rounded it to 300 here just to make it a little bit easier. But that oat milk, because it is fortified, like we checked on the package, you want to check every package, but this one here is obviously fortified. So it's got about 300, which, like we talked about, is around the same as cow's milk. So that brings us to about 1,400 milligrams of calcium. That's excellent. That's a great amount. It just surpasses that recommended amount, which is great because our bodies aren't going to be absorbing it as well as we age. Okay, and then finally, you want to find some movement that you enjoy. And I'm sure you guys have heard this countless times, but it is so important for us to do. So the recommended amount is 150 minutes of moderate to vigorous aerobic physical activity a week. So you want to just make sure that you are getting that in bouts of 10 minutes or longer. So 10 minutes isn't too bad. Usually we can find a spare 10 minutes in the day or 15 minutes in the day just to incorporate that a little bit. You can go for a brisk walk, cycling. Does anyone have any favorite types of movement or that they enjoy, that they like to participate in? Biking, yeah, I love biking. One of my favorites was I used to live in Pickering, and there were all kinds of beautiful trails around. And I used to love to go for trails. They had some uphill components. They had some beautiful lookouts. That's one of my favorite things to do. Go hiking, go off on a trail. And then you've got some more vigorous activity, which would be cross-country skiing or swimming. Swimming is really great because it's a little bit easier on our bodies to do. There's less, what's the word I'm looking for? It's less pressure on our bones because we're in water. So that's a really excellent one to do, especially if you are being more aware of your bone health. And then to strengthen your bones and muscles, we want to focus on resistance activities or resistance training. So that's going to be your lifting weights. Even if you do some light weights, that's still going to be good for you. Exercise bands, and then body weight exercises. So body weight exercises are using your own body weight versus using a weight. So there's some machines at the gym where you can use those. They're pretty tricky because, sometimes when we're using weights, we're used to using 15s or 5s or 10s or whatever it is that you use. And then starting to use your own body weight, it's a little bit more. So, depending on where you're at, there's different options for you. So those are the recommendations for movement. Like I said, it does really make a difference getting out and doing some movement. It is very cold right now, so it's hard to do, but even going for a walk around the mall or anything like that, it really helps to just get up and go move, do something. All right, so we're nearing the end here. Again, I just wanted to put up the services that we offer, and then just remind you about the workshops that we have coming up. We're going to be doing Eating for a Healthy Heart in February, the last Thursday of February. Same time, same place. Anti-Inflammatory eating is going to be the last Thursday in March. And Eating for a Healthy Gut is going to be the last Thursday in April. Again, they're all 11 to noon. I believe they will be live streaming all of them as well. I know we're still working out the kinks and everything for the live stream, but they will all be live streamed. And then as a reminder, we also do the virtual corporate, private, and school nutrition presentations. Right now, I believe most of those things are virtual. Some school boards might start allowing those field trips back in person. As far as I know right now, the Windsor area is all virtual from what I know. But we do offer presentations that way as well. Once we return to in-person, the field trips are really fun to do. I've hosted a few of them. It's really, really fun for the kids. And then again, we've got our webinars. That Forget the Wait, Feel Great is going to be February 2nd for 6 weeks, every Wednesday at 5:30. Really fabulous series. If you have any questions about it, please let me know. It's going to be myself and one of my colleagues hosting it. Okay, so again, thank you for joining me. If anyone has any questions, please ask. I tried to save a little bit of extra time at the end for questions, so I know we had a couple come in as we went, but if you have anything.
When are you at the Kingsville store?
So we have been directed to be at home right now unless we have an immediate need. So right now I've been coming in kind of on an as-need basis, but I believe January 31st, we should be hopefully coming back into the store more often. I'm usually there Tuesdays and Thursdays.
What, all day or?
Yeah, usually I'll be there about 9 to 5-ish. Sometimes 9:30 to 5:30. It just kind of depends on when people book. But yeah, again, they are asking that we do more virtual right now if it's possible. But in person is on an as-needs basis. So if you can't do virtual, or if you really don't think you're going to benefit from a virtual consult, we can do in person. I do have an office in there, so it is private. And I have business cards too, if you guys need them. Yes.
For the classes that start February 2nd,
Yes.
things open up, do you think it will be in person or not?
Those ones are going to be virtual, just because the colleague that I'm running them with, she is in the London area. So those will be virtual. We may in the future, I know that program was originally intended to be in person. So in the future, we likely will run it. I'm not sure when that will be yet, but I can always let you know if you are interested in it.
Where can we find that list of your programs that you have? Is there, can it be found on the website?
The workshops that I'm doing here, or just any of the. So we do have a website. It's mostly used for one-on-one consultation bookings. But if you go on the Xeris Dietitian website, it does have some information. If you want, I can always email you kind of a list of things that we have going on, because it is a little bit ever-changing. Yeah, it is a little bit ever-changing. So, but I can, certainly help you out with that. Okay? Anything else? No? Well, thank you so much. I had a great time with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it and learned lots. If anything does come up, or any, questions that you think of later on, I wonder what she meant by that, or anything, just feel free to reach out, send me an email, give me a call, and hopefully I can help you out with that, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.